Less of my kind.
Warning. Okay, just keep walking. That's right.
The newly released film, The Long Walk, is based on the novel by Stephen King, of the same title, under his then-pseudonym Richard Bachman. It's a dystopian thriller that was published in 1979, but various facets of it are still very much relevant today. This is also why the film has been garnering critical acclaim as well as box office success. But in this video, we're going to be talking about the literal act of the long walk, which is the core of the entire story. It's about young men participating in a grueling walking contest, which takes place annually. But it's this tedious task of walking that symbolizes so many things, between the lines and beyond the visuals. It poses as a metaphor of numerous aspects in society, as theorized by fans, logic, and a bit of rationality. So without any further ado, let's dive right into these theories one at a time. Here we go. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. A government-controlled experiment. Let's kick things off with the most popular one. This theory suggests that the Long Walk is a state-run experiment, which functions as a laboratory to study the endurance and obedience of participants as well as societal control under constraints. The government is personified by the omnipresent Major, who is a cold-hearted and calculating character. This set of rigid rules, likely to be non-negotiable, includes the mandatory 4 miles per hour pace, along with the accurate timing of warnings and the immediate execution for any violation of the law. All of these are established, strict parameters of this experiment. We can't deny that this whole ordeal is designed to create an environment that they can control. These soldier boys serve a dual purpose, as they are the enforcers of the rules, but more importantly, they are also the primary data collectors. With the cameras mounted on their vehicles, one can assume that they are instruments of surveillance, which are capturing every expression, every stumble, and every mental break for possibly a later analysis by state psychologists and strategists. With such an objective of an experiment like this, as explained by the overseer, to provide a boost to national productivity, it's clear that the advocates of the Long Walk downplay the cruelty by labeling this as something with a utilitarian purpose. The very concept of the walk itself is a malicious tool of manipulation. It provides two very powerful lessons for the general public, regardless of how contrasting they may sound to each other. These lessons are: 1. The myth of the lone winner who achieves the ultimate prize through grit and determination, which seems inspiring, and 2. The terrifying story of the 99 who fail and, as a result, are mercilessly eliminated. This helps to create a strong feedback loop consisting of hope and fear. It sounds compelling to citizens to push themselves beyond exhaustion and comply with the system set by the state. Now on to the lottery, which is described as something no one avoids and is well indicative of a society where economic deprivation and social pressure make the very idea of having a choice an illusion. Eventually, there's a constant supply of test subjects, very akin to a state, which fuels immense propaganda. Additionally, the barren and very obviously repetitive landscape of the rural highway may not be an accident. It could be a feature of this grueling walk. It doesn't offer comfort, ensures there are no distractions, and there is no means of escape. Now, along the way, we see the gradual loss of individuality among the boys, who instead end up referring to each other by their numbers rather than their names. This is a desired outcome in which this authoritarian state hopes to achieve the loss of self under the pressure of the state. Additionally, references to the Major's role are also a particularly huge giveaway. He is the bad daddy in the story, and a literal father to one walker. The Major's relationship with the boys evolves from being idolized in the beginning to being hated eventually by them. It's a transformation the state seems very likely to observe to possibly study the limits of paternalistic coercion. This entire event serves as a dark metaphor for how authoritarian regimes use their citizens like their pawns, and the Long Walk poses itself well enough to make one connect the dots and reach this conclusion about a government that views its people as mere resources to be tested, managed, and ultimately apply the use and throw method on humans for the sake of its own power. Where have you seen that before? a reality TV show disguised as a death march. Another theory explaining The Long Walk indicates it to be nothing but a state-sanctioned reality TV show to pacify the public through an extremely brutal form of entertainment that profits from human suffering. This idea, when elaborated further, assumes the host figure in the major, along with clearly defined rules, and with the possible ultimate prize being granted as a wish or even some sort of lifelong financial security. But again, this prize is the classic hook of any reality program, where a life-changing reward incentivizes contestants and audience alike to normalize the escalating drama. But here, the entire event is produced and broadcast as well, with cameras on the military vehicles, which act as the primary set of eyes for the public to watch every moment of agony and despair from the comfort of their homes. Along with that, we can infer the soldiers to also be functioning as cameramen, producers, and stage managers by ensuring the narrative of this reality TV show stays on track and that the most dramatic moments, like an emotional breakdown, a groundbreaking act of defiance, or even a death in some cases, are all captured for impact. However, there is something very unsettling about the absence of a live audience on the roadside. Unlike in the novel, where there were cheering crowds lining the route, the film represents a landscape that is only sparsely populated. This does help create a bleak atmosphere, while also cleverly suggesting that the audience for this cruel reality TV show is us, the viewers. With this, The Long Walk can call itself a meta-commentary on modern society and its passive consumption of real human tragedy as entertainment. Even in the story, their gradual mental turmoil is the primary content of this show. It's a train wreck in slow motion, which is designed to hold the morbid fascination of the viewers. The government's role also goes from starting out as a purely political entity to a cynical media production company. It stages events in this show just to create dramatic moments and to maintain suspense. An instance of this is the pointless uphill assault that mimics a dramatic battle sequence. Along with that, the Major's speeches as well are monologues designed to frame the narrative and casually justify the brutality. All in all, the show provides a distracting bread and circuses for the masses to prevent any form of dissent. By reducing sentient individuals to merely numbered contestants, the state demonstrates its authoritative power to make a game out of life itself. This theory infers that The Long Walk turns itself into a product for consumption and ends up questioning the morality of the audience and the system that aims to just produce spectacle with no regard for actual humans or their rights. A dystopian punishment system. Now, take this next theory as a sequel to the previously stated ones. Here, we posit the possibility of the Long Walk being the fascist state's form of punishment, which is a system designed to crush and eliminate dissent and coerce complete obedience through the suffering of the general public. Consider this whole ordeal to be a mandatory national service of sorts, and that none of the boys know anyone who hasn't signed up. This creates a dynamic where participation is an expectation that the participants can't escape from. The only threat that looms over this choice is the idea of getting squatted, which is a term vague enough to terrify them with the possibility of disappearance or an execution at the hands of the secret police. Here, we can establish the Long Walk as the lesser of two evils. The relentless pace of going at 4 miles per hour and the harsh environment on top of it are just tools of state violence designed to break the participants down and eventually eliminate them one by one to showcase the state's power again. Now, with this theory, we can correlate the system as deeply allegorical to the Vietnam War era during which Stephen King wrote the novel. The Walk is a direct parallel to the military draft, which involved young American men, mainly from poor and working class backgrounds, being forced into a military conflict. Like the Walkers, these soldiers were picked by a lottery system and were sent to a foreign jungle to walk, patrol, and even face death for reasons that became increasingly unclear. The grueling walk also mirrors the endless patrols in Vietnam, where young American men were pushed to their physical as well as psychological limits in a conflict that seemed to have no clear objective. The soldiers in the story, who issued warnings and fired shots, can seem akin to the military machine that helped process young men and manage their deaths. Here, the Major is the ultimate bad daddy figure, similar to a political or military leader who sent a generation to their deaths for a pointless cause. This major is the commander-in-chief demanding sacrifice from his sons, just like a government that betrays its youth. And thus, the Long Walk burdens the young men, who are cast as fodder for the agendas of the state. It makes its motto clear: conform without raising a question, or you too will be forced onto the road to be broken. A message that was a lived reality of many young men in 1970s America. A ritualistic or religious test. Now, in a much creepier turn of events, this next theory suggests the Long Walk as a nihilistic religious ritual, consisting of a brutal pilgrimage where suffering is the only form of devotion, and with death being the common denominator for all. This rite is restricted to involve a sacred ritual where 100 men are chosen as they undertake a journey of purification through extreme physical pain and mental isolation. They are then ritually sacrificed one by one until a single transcendent figure remains. This survivor, who can call himself the winner, is possibly granted a form of divine boon, which perhaps promises to provide the solutions to their deepest desires, be it revenge, peace, or even the meaning of life. The major here functions as the high priest, almost a godlike figure who is initially worshipped by the boys. His words are like a religious scripture, and the entire ritual is conducted under the surveilling gaze of his sunglasses. Additionally, the endless highway acts as the sacred path. As the bodies of participants fall, the walkers are forced to get rid of more of their earthly concerns and confront the spiritual questions of existence, purpose, and what lies beyond death. Their hallucinations and mental breakdowns can be seen as the dark moments of the soul, in its desperate attempts to find some meaning in the emptiness. However, don't forget that this is a religion without a god. The universe of the Long Walk, as per the Thomas Carlyle epigraph in the novel, is nothing but a huge, dead, immeasurable steam engine that is indifferent to their suffering and sacrifice. This Long Walk ritual is very much a parody of spiritual seeking. The path does not lead to heaven, but rather to an even deeper void, and the prize itself is a hollow promise, and that even winning that likely means being broken forever. Therefore, the walk, through this theory, refers to the blind faith in a meaningless system, by parodying the pointless search for meaning in a meaningless universe. A psychological experiment on human collapse. Our fifth theory advocates the idea of the Long Walk being a psychological experiment, which is state-sponsored, to conduct a clinical study of physical and mental degradation under the troubling conditions of the path they are taking. The 4 miles per hour pace is the only constant, and rather an inescapable strain to the participants, with the intention to inevitably overwhelm the human body. The set of warnings and the immediate execution that follows both function as a perfect loop in cases of negative feedback, and this helps provide consequences for failure. The prize, which is obviously the vague promise of a granted wish and lifelong wealth, acts as the potentially positive incentive, which lures the participants to push themselves enough for the state to study the power and hope and ambition in faces that most definitely express agony. A key aspect of this experiment is isolation. The boys are pretty much severed from the outside world, and even from their own identities, as they are referred to by their numbers rather than names. This strips them of social constructs and personal history, which is intentional to force the subjects to rely on their plain instincts and behaviors to ensure the recording of uncorrupted data on the raw human under stress. Additionally, the soldiers and their cameras can be seen as neutral researchers who are meticulously observing and recording the subjects. Each boy becomes a living data point. Some of them, like the violent Barkovich, exhibit an aggressive form of paranoia, whereas others, like the gentle Stebbins, fall into a disturbed intellectual detachment. One can even observe the formation of bonds to seek comfort and solidarity when in adverse situations, as seen between Garrity and McFreeze. The stated goal can be considered to possibly boost natural productivity. The state, in this case, has clearly gone beyond just entertainment or punishment for its own sake, and has rather shifted shifted its priorities in the empirical data on how to motivate, control, or even break a population through researched statistics. The boys having conversations about the meaning of life, along with their hallucinations and also their raw fears, are some of the findings of the primary research. This theory suggests that this experiment concludes only when the last subject remains, with his shattered mind and broken body representing the upper limit of absolute human endurance. Marvelous verdict. And that's our video. We hope you had a fascinating experience after hearing our possible theories to explain the idea, objective, and purpose of The Long Walk by Stephen King, which has been adapted into a film and is now successfully running in theaters. Now, as always, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, share it with your friends, and comment down below on what you think The Long Walk could be a metaphor for. Finally, please subscribe to Marvelous Videos for more such content. Until then, take care and ciao.